welcome to the first panel session. We're going to be talking about navigating the entrepreneurial path from idea to impact. And we're hoping that this is going to last for, say, 25 to 30 minutes, and we can take one or two questions, maybe one from the hall and one from our virtual audience. So the hope is that we can understand your entrepreneurial journey and we can be inspired to maybe start ours or to receive lessons from, from your story. And I'll start with Funke Bucknor, lawyer to event planner, and one of the biggest event planners on the continent. How did that happen? Talk to us first from the moment the idea dropped in your heart, getting to that, to who you are today.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. So it's a journey of, first of all, I would say passion, in terms of just even seeing a gap. So I saw a gap, and the gap, maybe I didn't even know the gap existed. When people say that there's a gap and you, as an entrepreneur, you're a solution provider, you're a problem solver. I was very young, so I didn't even really know all those terms, but I just knew that there was just a gap. People were just really struggling, and they were being stressed while they were trying to create joyful moments. So I thought, why are people going through all this? Let me help you take the stress. Let me help you just ensure that you can be happy during your most emotional moments. So that's just how it happened. I'd always been someone that was very, I would say, hyper. I loved attention to detail. I just loved making people happy. I loved making people happy. And I saw when people were planning weddings, what that did for them. So that was just how the idea came. I would tell a few friends, I can help you do this, I can help you sort this out. And then one of my cousins said to me, why don't you start charging for this? Because you do this already for all of us. And that's how I started charging. And I realized, oh my God, I can really make this a real profession. After going to all the law school and just really sweating it out and everything. And that's really how the journey really, really started. How
did your family feel when you told them, this law that you spent money training me to study, I'm pushing it aside to focus on event planning?
They were not very happy initially. I mean, your parents have always dreamt. In our generation, at that time, it was always you had to be a professional, engineer, doctor, lawyer. And then when I said to my dad, this was also a very new terrain. My parents didn't even understand what it was. What are you talking about? With all that, it's a Ravenscourt gown we bought for you. Your uncle did this, your auntie did this. And then you say you want to drop it. So they were very scared. They were scared. And I think that was also something that, even for everyone that is trying to go into a new journey, you were scared. And when people don't understand, I didn't even really understand. But I just knew there was a problem and that I could solve. So they were, at the end of the day, in a few months after, they were now the ones that would be going to tell everybody, oh, my daughter is an event, she can plan, oh, she's amazing. And I'm like, hey, daddy, okay, So that's how they felt at the initial stage.
Amazing. Thank you very much for sharing with us. So there's always that initial fear. People don't need to feel weird when they're about to start something new or shift to a different career path, when they're not maybe getting the immediate support that they need from the ones that they, call family and friends. Dr. Ola Brown, I was honored to have interviewed you many years ago in the Flying Doctor days, but it's been, so much has happened between then and now. So talk to us through your journey from, studying medicine to all the many tech exploits you've had so far.
So I actually got into financial services by mistake. I started Flying Doctors in 2012, 2011. I just graduated from med school, and like my big sis, Funke Bucknor, I was just like, okay, this professional degree, I'm not sure that I'm going to do this. I was really unsatisfied with just like the act of seeing patients, and I felt like the problem was more with the system that we're seeing patients with and the financing that was going into the system. And also I'd never really met bankers before. So all my friends were medical students, but I took a year out to think about what I was going to do, and I went to go and live in Japan for a year. I was awarded a scholarship by the Japanese government. And that's when I started meeting people from Goldman Sachs, from McKinsey, from BlackRock. And I kind of started admiring what they were doing and also admiring kind of the impact they were making. And I started realizing that I can make just as much impact as an entrepreneur as I could make as a doctor seeing patients. And I was very, very concerned about healthcare in Africa as well. So I just decided to move. I had deferred my job for a year anyway in the UK, but I decided to move. My parents were still living in the UK at the time. So they were like, well, you just graduated and now you want to come to Nigeria and start a business. Like, why not wait a little while? I'm like, if I wait, like, I'm going to get into the system and, you know, I won't do it anymore. So let me just do it now that I have no attachments, I have nothing. And if I don't make it in a year, I promise you I'll come back to London and work in the NHS. Within a year, my first contract that I got was more than my entire salary in a year in the UK. So obviously, like, I stayed in Nigeria, met my husband here, settled here, and I had a liquidity event. So there was a minority stake sold in my company. So I took that money and I had been meeting a lot of young tech entrepreneurs, but I didn't really know how to invest in them. But I met somebody that did. He was starting a fund. So I took a lot of the money from that exit and I put it into a fund, which was great because I really wanted to invest in the technology ecosystem. But unfortunately, I don't know why, like, things in my life revolve around medical emergencies, but the CEO of that fund had a medical emergency and had to go to the UK and relocate. And then there was nobody to run the fund. So at the time, Mr. Bode Augusto of blessed memory was the chairman of the company. So he said, Ola, like, we don't have anybody to run this thing. And I said, you know, I'm a medical doctor, like, I studied medicine. He said, don't worry. Just come. So I started running the fund. I was able to take my master's in finance, really enjoyed it. Now taking my PhD in finance. So we ended up being the first investors in Paystack, first investors in Flutterwave. And we invested just when those companies were like about $1 million in valuation. One went to $200 million, one is several billion dollars now. So we ended up doing some really good investments. And, you know, I've been in financial services ever since. My company is still running, paying very, very good dividends, and, you know, growing successfully without me even being on the board, which is great. So what lessons does my story really hold for sort of women in the room looking to do things with their careers? I mean, what have been the success factors for me? There's a study in the Harvard Business Review by a Professor Ben from Chicago University. And what he did was he put sensors on the arms of men and women working in KPMG, Goldman Sachs, all New York firms. And he told them to check in and check out in terms of the hours that they spent at work, the hours that they spent networking, and then submit their performance reviews to him. And he did this for 18 months. And what he found was that women were working the same hours as men in all of these firms that he studied. He also found that women were spending the same time networking as men, which I thought would be different, but it was the same. And he found out that women were also getting the same scores on performance reviews as men. However, the women were not getting promoted the same as men. So I always remember that study when I'm speaking to audiences of women, because sometimes I feel that even though you're performing at the same level, there is an intrinsic bias that doesn't allow women to be seen as leaders, because you've got to look like a leader. And in the mind of most people that are making those promotion decisions, a leader still looks like a man. And that's sort of an intrinsic bias that is going to take time to take out of people's minds. And sometimes I go to women's conferences and there's usually like a motivational, somebody saying that, you know, you guys need to network more, you guys need to do more. And I see it like a white person coming and saying, you black people, did you create this phone? You're not innovative, you need to think more. That's why your country is not developed. And I just think that, you know, there are various reasons why Nigeria is not developed. And it's not because Nigerians are not sensible and they're not working, they're not hardworking, we're not lazy people. But imagine like a white person, like, you know, the CEO of Apple coming here and saying, you people have not created anything. All these things we created for you, that you people need to think better. And sometimes that's how I feel like it comes across to women that are really, really putting in the work and doing not just one job, in their professional lives, but 2 jobs, and one of the jobs is just actually the most underpaid and underappreciated job in the world. Because if you're a full-time mom, in Nigeria today, if you're a full-time mom, and you've decided to dedicate your life to your 5 children, and you've worked in that role for 10 years, then right now, Nigerian law, if your husband decides to divorce you, Nigerian law, according to Nigerian law, you go in with what, you come out with what you went in with. It's as if you weren't doing any work at all. So my sort of insights from my own journey as a professional woman is, the role that negotiation in my marriage has played, where, I've had to explain some of these issues to my husband and say, look, that my career is important to me. Because at the end of the day, right, if I stay in this house and be working, after 10 years, they'll say that I'm a lazy person and I've not done anything. And the law also supports it. The law does not say that you're entitled to anything if you spend your time in the home. It's as if you've done nothing, even though it's a full-time job. So I just want to encourage women on the basis of that study that it's not as if you're not working enough. I see the way Nigerian women network, and I believe that Tone is leading a movement that will help us to be able to network. But it's not as if, when I go to Ikoyi Club, sometimes I see men, the same men at the same table, sitting Friday, Saturday, Sunday, full-time there. And that's how they just stay there. No woman can do that because we simply don't have the time to do that. We have other responsibilities. How can you stay the whole of Friday night till midnight, the whole of Saturday, you resume there at 8 a.m., you're there till 6 p.m. Sunday, you're also there. Don't you have anything else to do? Women have other things to do. We have other responsibilities. So instead of saying, you guys need to network more, and you people are not supporting each other, and you people are not doing this, and you people are not doing that, I would honestly like to encourage every woman in the room to say you're doing a lot. You're doing a lot. And I think the biggest thing that I would advocate for women in Nigeria is to really press for legislative reforms for women's work to be recognized, number
Absolutely.
1. And then number 2, I'm from a small state. I'm from Ekiti State. So we're only 0.1% of the entire population of Nigeria. But do you know that we have 3 senators in Abuja? 3. And we're only 0.1%. But it's something in the Constitution that says that as any state must have representation in Abuja, even if you're only 0.5 of the 0.1% of the Nigerian population. Women are 50% of the Nigerian population. Do you know how disrespected you have to be to say that there's absolutely no law that says we have to have any representation in Abuja, even though the people that have 0.1 are still represented?
Right.
And the reason for that law is to promote harmony in Nigeria, right? Every state has to be represented, no matter how small they are. Because imagine, I always tell Ekiti people that if not for that law, do you think that we would have seen Abuja at all? But we need to have one senator, we need to have senators, we need to have ministers. And I think that if there's anything that I would advise women to do, it's not that you're lazy, it's not that you're not networking, it's not that you're fighting too much, it's that there's no actual infrastructure like the Constitution that protects Ekiti people that protects you. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Ola Brown. I mean, so many valid points there in terms of us being involved. We need to ensure that there is legislature to protect women. It will surprise you and shock you that even in 2023, issues like female inheritance are still conversations today. I mean, my father died over 20 years ago, and those are the things we battled then. And even now, I still see women who are treated like rags after their husbands die. So we cannot stop having these conversations. We cannot stop pushing for legislature to protect women even better. All right. Now, I want to talk, I mean, she's talked about networking, and I'll come back to that, but your journey. I've been able to read about your journey and, you transitioning from practicing law and finding this idea. Gaia means earth, I believe. Mother Earth, right. So talk to us about your journey as well. I mean, for the benefit of those who are here and those who are online, the first time the idea came to you and how you were able to transition from your career as a lawyer to setting this up and it's becoming one of the most influential networking platforms for women.
Oops, oh my God. Okay, thank you very much. So my story is a little bit different because the 2 brave women went straight into their entrepreneurial journeys. And mine took quite a number of years, I mean, decades. And the reason for that was because I think I always thought, well, you know, like, yes, I'm from the generation where we all had to be professional or, you know, or nothing, basically. We weren't even encouraged to go into the civil service. So it was, you know, lawyer, doctor, engineer, or as one comedian says, layabout. So, so I chose the path of law because both sides of my family are lawyers, and went into law and did that for many years, practice, even criminal law tribunals, believe it or not, logistics. And then finally, I came to a point where I sort of reached a crossroads. I think I was about 35 and was thinking I was just too old to change, because I was offered a job in oil and gas. I was actually headhunted. And it was a question of, do I stay in this place or do I make this career change now from logistics or whatever? So I took a risk and I changed career, and, you know, I didn't look back. But as I went along, you know, you see all the various things. And unfortunately, till today, women are leaving, you know, corporate jobs because they are not seen. And, you know, you see all of that, and, you know, women, we tend to think that politics is a dirty word. It really isn't. And honestly, I think we better get into it, especially corporate politics, because it's just the way things are, and the way, you know, that's the way that you will progress, you know, no matter what. Because we sit there thinking that, you know, they should see my work, right? Because, like, surely my work should talk for me, but no. You know, just, you know, I was talking earlier about, you know, having sponsors. Sponsors are the people who talk about you when you're not in the room. These are the people who put you, you know, together with opportunities. I also am a great believer in serendipity. You just never know who you meet, what you say, and, you know, where that's going to lead. But anyway, back to my story. So I decided that, I think so around 2008, I went to live in France, in Paris, because for work. And I did 3 years of business development, what they call affaire nouvelle, which is basically in the heart of the company, which is basically buying and selling oil blocks. And to do that, I had to actually, you know, learn a bit of economics. I had to learn all the financial, I don't know, jargon, and understand, you know, all the various things that go into actually making decisions, whether to, you know, make a deal or not. And that was tough. It was tough because, you know, I was living in a country where, yeah, I'd always studied, you know, French, but was not a fluent speaker. And then having to work in that environment and then doing something completely different. So one thing I will say is, you know, take risks, because, you know, if you're offered an opportunity, don't panic because it's not, you know, you're in your comfort zone. So I did take that risk, and I went and, you know, did 3 years, and then I came back to Nigeria and went to live in Abuja for 3 years, again, for work. And so in the 6 years that I was away, and then I came back. So in Abuja in 2014, I was reading a story, or I don't know, something anyway, about this woman who had been in corporate life for 17 years, and then she went and did this Triumph MBA, and then she you know, built a luxury brand. And I thought, oh, that looks interesting. You know, maybe this could be me. Because, you know, I think at that time I was a little bit fed up because I'd done business development, which was really exciting. And I came back to law and I'm like, law is a bit boring. So I thought, you know what, but how can I possibly go and do an MBA? Because, you know, I'm a lawyer and I'd been a lawyer all my life. And I was really panicking about, you know, all the stuff I would have to do, finance, strategy, all these things. Anyway, with the Triumph EMBA, you have to actually send your CV first, and they tell you whether you should apply. And I just thought, you know, like joke, let me just try. You never know. And they said, oh, you have such a great CV. I'm like, what? Anyway, I sent it, and they said apply. So I applied. Cut a long story short, I got in. But it was the toughest 2 years of my life, because I was doing that as well as a job, and, you know, with a really large portfolio as well. And the difficulties that I had, you know, and so it was tough. It was very, very hard. learning new things. But I have to say that by the second module, because we had to go away like 6 times to 6 different countries. By the second module, which was at Stern, and Stern is known for finance, right? So we did corporate finance, strategy, risk management, all these big things. I knew that there was no going back, because I was reading all these case studies and I'm thinking, all these people are doing these fantastic things and they have one head. No, I too, I must try. So when I finished that, so by that time I just knew I'm just gonna leave. So I gave my notice in sort of mid-2016, because I knew that they would have to do, they had to decide on what they were going to do with the stuff that I was leading. Anyway, I finally left, and I have to say before I move on that when you work in a company like I did, in oil and gas, multinational company, subsidiaries in 99 countries, it's like the UN. Right, so you don't really think about people you don't really think that you need anything on the outside. I mean, well, actually, first of all, you can't really cope with anything else, because you're so busy, you're so focused on the job that you're doing. And then so you just, your friendships, hopefully a lot of them are strong and they don't fail, but you can't really keep in touch all the time with people. And so when I finally left, and in January 2017, I was now thinking, so yes, what now? And I went to do the AMBA because I knew I would want to run something at some point, and I wanted to have the skills to do it. And I realized then that people were asking me if I was still in Paris. So I then realized that nobody really thought of me. No, I was on nobody's radar. Right? So this is this whole thing about networking, staying in touch, network within, network outside. I can't emphasize how important it is. Because when you do want to do something for yourself, you need that network. And you need to be strategic about building that network. You need to be strategic about, maintaining that network, about growing it. So anyway, when, I then had to start from scratch, literally from scratch. And then I realized, okay, I know quite a few people, but the first project I wanted to actually do was sort of still in hospitality, still in the private network, in the private club sort of industry. But it was really a club for creatives. That was the first one. And I made many mistakes. I did a lot of things wrong. I think I still had the mindset of Total and the billions of dollars, thinking that, yeah, this is okay, I can do this, yeah, but really, it's your money now, not, So I did something, made mistakes, did marketing early. The property we got was not good enough because it was subject to flooding. It was in Ikoyi, it was subject to flooding. It was 8 townhouses, 1 outhouse. They told me, yes, pull it all down and rebuild. I said, So the budget of the project was in the sort of like 700 million. It became 2.2 billion or something. I was just like, this is ridiculous. There's no project here, so let me just cut my losses. But what was interesting was that I was looking, obviously looking for funding. And because I'm not, it's not a tech business, it's tech enabled, but it's not a tech, well, it is today. That was really, hospitality was, it was, buildings and real estate and all this type of thing. And so and also it was my first business venture, so there's no way I was going to go before any VC or PE to ask for money. It was like, even with the banks, it was like, where are the 3 years of, I didn't have anything like that. So I had to look for people to talk to pitch to. And I didn't find any women. And I used 2 business financial consultants. And there were no women on their lists. And I thought, well, this is really odd. And this is really what led me, started to think about, where are the women? And why are the women not investing in women? Why are the women not in the circles where people are looking for money and they're not there? So I then, started to think about, coming building a women's club. And the idea really was to take a little bit from men, in a way, because men are fairly strategic networkers. I think we network, but we network in a very different way. We don't really think in, we're not transactional. We're like, okay, what can I do for you? No, but men are very transactional, and I'm not saying we should be like them. I think we should take a leaf from what they do. And so the first thing I found was that I didn't know a lot of people, but I actually really didn't know what they do. I didn't know okay, you're a lawyer, but what do you do day to day? Because if I don't know what you do day to day, how can we unearth any synergies? How can we know what it is that we can do together, right? So this is why the whole idea of, Gaia came, and the way it started was I had to test it. So we tested it with, I knew what the plan was going to be. It was going to, we had to have a clubhouse because, as Ola said, sitting in one place day in, day out. The idea is that if you can see people on a regular basis, that's how you begin to build relationships. That's how you can build trust. You can't sit there all day. But so I knew there'd be a clubhouse. I knew there would be, small, what do we call it, smaller interest groups. We call them mini clubs. So I'm a strong believer in smaller group things, maybe because I'm an introvert and I can't really deal with large crowds. So I just believe that there's more power in small groups. And even if you have to network in a large group, the idea is really to identify a couple of people and talk to them. And so I tested it with the Business Dining Club. And the idea for the Business Dining Club is to, we met every month. And I said, we know you may have a husband or children. Thank you. Lovely. Very good. But today all we're doing is we're talking about you, what you do, what you want, and where you want to go. Because this is the only way that somebody else can support you. It's the only way that somebody can, introduce you to somebody. And I remember actually when I started to formulate Gaia, I had people say, don't talk about what you're doing, because if you do, somebody may steal your idea. And I was like, let them steal the idea. Because if I hadn't spoken to all the people I spoke to, I wouldn't have actually met the majority of people that I did. Because people would say, Tom was doing this, is thinking about doing or trying to do this thing. You got to speak to somebody, and this is how it all evolved. And then, of course, I still had to raise money to, I found the clubhouse, we had to renovate it or remodel it, and remodel it in a big way. So I really needed a lot of money. And so what did I do? Actually my first two investors were men, because they were the investors in the first club. And when it failed, I was ashamed though. I couldn't go and say, sorry, your money is gone. So I took that loss. It was very painful. But I didn't want to wallow. And I said, look, do you want, happy to give you your money back, but I'm going in a different direction. And of course, with entrepreneurs, they invest in you, right? So they said, no, we're investing in you, keep going. Anyway, so I had to raise a lot more money. And so I had this whole pitch deck and, the entry level and all these things. And somebody said to me, look, you better start talking to women and just lower your entry level and talk to people. Anyway, cut a long story short, this is exactly what I did. Pitched to women. I think I have about 22 investors, the majority of whom are women. And because... Thank you. I think the issue of women and risk is pertinent because we like to dip our toes in the majority, not everyone. Ola is brave and Funke is brave. Funke is brave. But we do like to dip our toes just a little bit, but I think we need to take more risks because it is big risk, big reward. And I think that the sooner we start to invest in other women, because honestly, we actually understand, there are many things that we understand that men don't necessarily understand. There are many languages that we speak, that men don't really understand. And so this is the reason that we need to really, when I say support other women, I really mean more than just, call me today or whatever. It's really, thinking about how we can do more. I always say that, doing bigger, doing better. There's no way I, on my own, can do anything that is significant. So even as Bola was saying, you know, get people in the room and start to talk about these things. And these are the kind of things that we do, you know, talk about. It's just to build that roadmap to where we go. And so, well, you know, I tested it with the business dining clubs, and then I saw that, you know, was really working. People were talking, they were exchanging, they were actually getting together. And then I closed it off to say, okay, will people pay for this service? And I saw, phew, it dropped. And I thought, oh, that's odd. Hey, women don't like to pay. Why? Anyway, I believe in my spirit, and I know for a fact that women are powerful together. And I just know that if we keep going, and the economy is tough, but we have to keep going, because I think this is now so we've really been operational for 2 years, because we moved into the clubhouse, 2 years ago, and that's when, you know, we expanded quite a bit with staff and everything. And, you know, it is difficult, but I see the power of women together. I see what they can do. I see what they're doing together. And, you know, I think it's not something that is easy to even articulate. It's very powerful. And so anyway, we closed it off, and we saw that it fell, and we closed it even further, because 6 months down the line, I said, look, even, you know, as network members, because that's what we called it, we're moving to full membership come January 2020. And then January 2020 came, and then COVID struck. The great thing was that I was still struggling to look for money. So we started the designs for the clubhouse, but we hadn't actually started, we actually started breaking, whatever it was, breaking walls and stuff. But I was grateful that we were not at a place where, you know, we now have to start selling stock or, you know, inventory and all this kind of thing. But what I did find was that we were able to grow quite quickly in 2020 once we were on lockdown, because people were looking for something to do. And we've just pivoted completely online. Everything we did was online, from having cocktails and chill on a Monday evening to book club, to film club, to all kinds of different things. We just did it all online. And so people, you know, saw value with that. And then that's how, you know, people started to talk about Guy and how we grew. But, you know, we're still growing. It's very tough. I have to encourage myself a lot. You know, I was very eager to let's get this thing done, rather than how we're going to move to year 2, 3, and 5, right? But you know, it's a business that, you know, we're bootstrapping even at this point, but at least we're still there, and you know, we have to continue to be there, because I see that there is great value. I just want to speak about one thing. The reason that we say that Gaia is for decision makers is because, first of all, I believe that group is kind of like sidelined. You're there, so what else do you need? But actually, that group of women need a lot of support, because they generally will find that they're the single, you know, the lone voice in the wilderness, right? And so it's nice if they can come to, you know, talk to their peers, you know, have support, bounce ideas around them, etc. 1 minute. And finally, what I will say is that we do have a younger group that I suppose we mentor, sponsor, whatever, and they're called the Gazelles. And the idea is to help them in their journey. We see them once a quarter, but you know, if they want to have a mentor, they can just, you know, like raise a hand. And I have to say that last Friday I went to speak. Actually, it was here. I was speaking somewhere. And after it was talking about celebrating female founders, and after we ended it, a lady came and, you know, spoke to me at the end of the day, and she said, can I mentor her? And I said, well, okay. And she, you know, I said, okay. She asked for my number, and I gave it to her. And then, because we were doing something really special yesterday for Gazelles, we had this coach. She was like a group coaching, but it was like a very very intimate arrangement where, if I understand correctly, yesterday they were all crying to that point. But anyway, I had said to her, we're doing this, so why don't you sign up? I don't know if they're full, but, you know, try your luck. Anyway, she came and she sent me a really lovely note saying how she had benefited from it and what if she hadn't come to talk to me? So it's just important just to encourage everybody that, you know, you just never know. Just serendipity, you meet somebody, talk about something, maybe something doesn't happen today, but you follow up and, you know, some magic may be made. And on the final note, now I've forgotten. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for that.